What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Bills Chat Live. I am Josh McCarty. With me tonight is Luka. And Luka, by the looks of your background, you are back in our home country?
Yeah, I'm back stateside, It's nice to have good audio, good quality back in the studio, also known as my office. It's good to be back, although I will say I do miss a plethora of things about the UK. I thoroughly enjoyed my weeks over there. It was a great trip, but we're back to the normal grind and everything like that. I don't mean grind in a negative way, but we are back home and I'm back in the studio and I'm back live Friday night with you, Josh, to talk some Bills football.
Some Bills football indeed. And boy, is this a big game coming up as the Bills are getting ready to take on the team that ended their season last year, the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's been an interesting season for these Bengals. They started the season off. They lost they lost three of their first four games, and now they're on a 3-game winning streak. And you can kind of start looking at when you can project Joe Burrow started to get healthy, and that's kind of the line in the sand of where these Bengals started to really turn it on. And we'll get into all of that tonight. We're going to get into matchups on offense, ways we think that the Bills can attack these Bengals on defense. We're going to talk about the Bills on defense. How do they match up? Or I'm sorry, the Bengals on defense, because the Bengals did a bang up job on these Bills last year in the playoffs, held the Bills to 10 points and really had the Bills offense looking confused despite the Bills offense being fully healthy for that game. We're going to talk about ways the Bills can attack the Bengals defense. We're going to give our predictions on the game. We're going to have Luka's locks. We'll talk about some of the roster moves that took place this week. The Bills added 3 players, all of which you've probably heard of, a couple of which I think will have a pretty significant impact on the roster the rest of the way. But Luka, right off the top, I kind of want to reverse engineer what we normally do on the post-game show. Normally on our post-game show, I ask you, how are you feeling? What went through your mind? Given the fact that we now have basically a half season's worth of data on both of these teams, given the fact that this is the team that ended the Bills season in pretty embarrassing fashion, and given the fact that this game is going to be under the lights, much the same way that the unfortunate DeMar Hamlin game was, what is your confidence level in the Bills getting a victory this week? I don't want you to give your prediction. I don't want you to spoil it, but what's your overall confidence level right now in these Buffalo Bills in a matchup like this?
Coin flip. I will just put it nice and simple like that. It is a true coin flip feeling to me. When it comes to the Bills right now, where they stand offensively, where they stand defensively, how they've looked of recent, stuff of that nature. The confidence level I have is I always think they have a chance, but it really does feel like a coin flip. It's if obviously if you don't have Josh Allen, you don't even have a remote say in this game. This game's not on Sunday night and everything of that nature. But overall, it's like Josh Allen always gives you a chance, things of that nature. But I really don't know truly how comfortable to be about it beyond that. It's one of those things where when you look at it one way, there's something to like. When you look at it another way, there's probably a thing or two not to like. It's kind of one of those kind of ever so going and flowing things with this matchup. And that's just what happens though in these big matchups, in these kind of season defining matchups where there's a lot at stake. Both sides understand it. Both sides are, chirping each other a little bit more from the Bengals side in this sake, it seems like recently, but everyone understands kind of how important this game is, both for the now and for the future down the road for remaining in the season and then going into the playoffs. So a coin flip is kind of, in a weird way, a good place to be in my mind because it's better than the alternative, which is not so good. And overall, you just want a chance when it comes to a big matchup like this.
Yeah, I will tell you, when this game first not came out, it came out when the schedule was dropped. When the game ended last week against the Bucks, and we had the entire NFL weekend to stew on this Bengals game, and then we proceeded to watch the Bengals come off their bye and really manhandle the 49ers in San Francisco. I was not feeling good. I was like, wow, the Bengals look fully formed. Joe Burrow looks like he's not feeling any of the effects of the calf injury. Their offense went right through the Niners many instances. Joe Mixon looked good last week. I think the Bengals defense is very underrated. I thought they had a very good plan in confusing the 49ers. Kind of looking under the hood of that matchup, not to make excuses. That is not what we do. think there were some factors in that game that worked against the Niners, one of which Brock Purdy maybe shouldn't have even played in that game. I don't know how fully recovered he was from his concussion. He certainly did not look like the best version of himself, but the Bengals defense did some things to confuse him. I will just say that these Josh Allen Bills, and really going back to about 2020 when they came on the scene as one of the upper echelon heavyweight teams in the sport, I feel like they play their best when the big moment happens. And I know, like, okay, that's an eye roll. They've lost in the playoffs every year. You can point to what happened last year, but think about this Bills team going to Arrowhead in 2021 in the regular season after the Chiefs walloped them in the playoffs in 2020. And they punched the Chiefs in the mouth that night. And they came onto that field with a swagger, with an energy. Think about these Bills opening the season in 2022 against the Rams on banner night, and the energy and the attitude they brought to that game and the way that they dictated that game. I don't know right now, the way the Bills are, the way their roster is, the way that they're missing Matt Milano, Daquan Jones, Tre'Davious White. If they are man for man as good as the Bengals, I think it's pretty even, maybe slight edge to the Bengals. I do have a feeling you're going to get the Bills' best shot though on Sunday. I think that the fact that the Bengals have been chirping this week is not lost on them. And I just do get a vibe that this Bills team, being the fact this is the first time they are an underdog since when, Luka, last year had to be. When would they have last even been an underdog?
I honestly was trying to think about that when the line kind of, what was it? One of the sports books had them as a favorite for all of an hour, and then it
Mhm.
flipped really, really quick. And I remember trying to think about it. The last time I can possibly think that they were an underdog was in Arrowhead last year, week 6, but I can't for the life of me remember what it actually was going into that game. I do believe they were a slight dog, like a 1.5 point dog, which was the whole thing where if you think about home team gets a field goal, it's a quote unquote dog. It's kind of the same thing in this regard where if it's less than 3 points and the road team's the dog, it's a very even matchup. If not, their Vegas is kind of thinking and tipping the scale the other way just a hair. But that's the last time I can remember the Bills even remotely being a dog potentially.
And Jacob Spears says the Bills can win the Super Bowl. They absolutely can, Jacob. And really, for the Bills to win the Super Bowl this year, they need to continue to be excellent on offense. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but I think lost in the fact that Josh Allen has had a couple of primetime spots that haven't looked beautiful. He is right now in the conversation for the best quarterback in the sport as far as statistics go in 2023. He's having a fantastic 2023 by almost every standard. And this offense last week against the Bucks looked like they finally unlocked something that we have been begging for weeks, which was tempo, up tempo, 3 wide receiver, not subbing in guys, taking 20 seconds off the play clock before they even get the play in. And I kind of want to go out of order on this just because we're talking about the game. It's such an exciting game. And I want to talk about the Bengals on defense because the Bengals gave the Bills all kinds of fits last year in the playoffs. Lou Amorano is one of the best defensive coordinators in the sport, probably should be an offense or a head coach in this league at this point. And he put on a clinic last week against the San Francisco 49ers. So Luka, right off the bat, thinking about this Bengals defense, thinking about some of the names they have both at edge rusher, we know they have 2 very excellent linebackers. How confident are you that the success we saw last week for the Bills offense can continue against this Bengals defense?
Um, I actually there's I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, Josh. There's on one hand, I get very worried about the edge defenders for the Bengals, mainly Hendrickson. Like they're a very, very, very good duo in this league, and they've proven that they can do things. But outside of those guys, I just don't see game wreckers beyond them. And the Bills are the kind of team in an offense right now where the big plays aren't happening as much as we kind of came to be used to in the past few years. And yet you're still seeing an efficiency level, especially when they do the hurry up with Kincaid down, up the middle and so on and so forth. Diggs is Diggs, and everything was going well, especially last week. When it comes to just efficiency, it felt like it stalled out at times. You didn't get as many scores as you would have hoped, and that's why the game ended up being close. But still, I feel like you can at least say that the offense was fairly efficient last week as a whole. They never kind of had 3-and-out and stall outs that were happening where you really were scratching your head. There were moments, of course, coming out in shotgun at the one, things like that where you're just like, okay, what are we doing here? But those are just moments, right? Those are just plays. And overall, I just don't look at this Bengals defense. I think it is well coached. Everything you said about the DC is spot on. I think he gets so much more out of this defense than the players themselves kind of are able to do based on their talent level and whatnot. You have Daxton Hill playing safety for them meaningful snaps, and he's been okay for them. But overall, their secondary is at bang average, and their linebackers are definitely decent. I think they've actually been underperforming just a touch on the season as a whole. So it's really just edge defenders creating pressure and havoc in the backfield for a quarterback. And beyond that, there's opportunity to be had. And I think for a Josh Allen type quarterback, it could potentially be kind of an issue for the Bengals defense, no matter what they scheme up, no matter what they do, just because they don't have the depth of talent out there to kind of overcome the issues and the holes that they have beyond the edge defender position.
Jacob Spears with a question in chat. Who's going to be cornerback? Jacob, clarify that for me, and I will get your answer. Do you mean for the Bills or the Bengals? Because there are questions on both sides. I'm going to piggyback off some of the stuff that Lucas said, because I think some of the things the Bengals did last year against the Bills are not necessarily in their tool bag this year. One thing the Bengals do a fantastic job is changing the post-snap picture on the play. And one reason they were able to do that is much like the Bills have with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. The Bengals last season had a fantastic veteran safety group with Von Bell and Jesse Bates, and it allowed them to show you one look pre-snap, and then at post-snap they could kick into another look, and the way that Bell and Bates knew how each other were going to play allowed them the comfortability to do that. Now, Jacob says he's asking about the Bills. So we will certainly get to what the Bills cornerback situation is going to look like with an injury that popped up for Christian Benford on Friday. And then the midseason trade of Rasul Douglas. But for the Bengals cornerback situation, Luka, I think there's to finish the safety point before I get to that. Both of those safeties are gone. They both left via free agency. You already mentioned Daxton Hill, who I think is an up-and-coming, very good player in this league. And then they have Nick Scott starting opposite him. But I think they lose a lot of their flexibility to do that post-snap picture-changing stuff that they did last year, because these guys are still learning each other. I also think this is one of my keys to the game. Daxton Hill has been their chess piece matchup on opposing tight ends when the Bengals are in man coverage. Why do I bring that up? I think Ken Dorsey has a real opportunity this week, Luka, if he wants to send Kincaid in motion pre-snap, line him out wide, bring him back into the snap, find out where Daxton Hill lines up pre-snap, and that will be a tell to let you know if the Bengals are in zone or man. And look, there are other ways to do that. We have seen the Bills line up Latavius Murray at wide receiver with no intention of snapping the ball. But if a linebacker follows him out there, they're in man. If a cornerback's out there, they're in zone. If you've played Madden for more than 10 minutes, you know this trick. And the Bills have been doing that. But I do think we will see Kincaid as a moving chess piece in this game. And then I mentioned the cornerback situation. They have their best cornerback on their team is Chidobe Awuzie. He missed all of last year with an injury, and then he's had a back injury this year. He is back, but he's only back on a rotational basis right now, rotating with a rookie cornerback Luka and I both liked, DJ Turner, but he's albeit a rookie, and DJ Turner outsnapped him last week. All of that leads me to think, Luka, I want to see the Bills continue to go up tempo this week. I want to see the play come in. I want to see commit to a formation, commit to not necessarily a formation, commit to a personnel grouping, get to the line, snap it, run your play, get to the line, snap it, run your play. Because I don't want the Bengals to have time to breathe on defense. I want you to challenge DJ Turner, the rookie cornerback, to make sure he's on the same page as the two safeties that are still trying to learn what's going on back there. And can Josh Allen outthink what's going on defense without allowing the defensive coordinator to interject himself in the situation. So for me, I know it's something we've all been pounding the table for, but especially given the state of where the Bengals defense is, I think going up tempo this week is paramount to the Bills' success.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb is if you maintain personnel on the field, you go up tempo to kind of force the defense to stick with whatever they have on the field. By doing so, you're also just creating simplistic defense out across the field from you. So you're making both a young and inexperienced secondary kind of think on the fly, but then also you're making them kind of sit in a more base look for Josh Allen to then just exploit and absolutely take advantage of. And everything you brought up about that is spot on. It's just one of those things where it makes way too much sense. And then by also going up tempo, you're helping neutralize something that is called the pass rush, which I mentioned was their greatest strength on the edge. The pass rush. Oh my goodness, I can't say rush tonight. The pass rush is absolutely their bread and butter on defense and where they find success. It's where they found success last week against San Fran. And the other thing about the San Fran game was San Fran was down a couple key personnel individuals that made their life a lot more difficult against this Bengals team. So I do think there is plenty of opportunity to be had by doing things or continuing things of which the Bills found success in last week into this game, even though you are playing a better opponent that is the Bengals.
The last thing I want to say on the Bengals before we spin it around and talk about the Bengals offense, because we've already gotten chat saying like, how are we going to stop the Bengals? And you got to get Burrow on his butt. Is the Bengals are blitzing more this year than last year. Last year they were 20% blitzing. This year they're all the way up to 12th in the league, 27% blitzing. But what I will say about that is a lot of that came early in the season when Awuzie was healthy and on a full pitch count. I do think they will scale back the blitzing this week because they don't want to leave DJ Turner on an island with Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs. That is a recipe for disaster. And I do think that the Bengals are going to try to keep the Bills in front of them and hope that the Bills make an executional mistake or they just make a mistake that we've seen Josh Allen make, unfortunately, a little bit too much and put the ball in harm's way. They are a grabby defense as far as snagging turnovers, and that would be my guess. But overall, my number one key for the Bills offense, my primary key is I want you guys to go fast. I don't want to allow the Bengals defense to adjust. I want to move Kincaid all around pre-snap while Josh Allen tries to identify what the defense is in and make those defenders on the Bengals prove that they're on the same page. Let's spin it around, Luka. This Bengals offense is a handful. In a lot of ways, the loss to the Bengals last year kicked off an offseason of we have to weaponize Josh Allen. We took one look at this Bengals team. We were like, holy cow, they have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. We need more weapons on our offense. Now, it wasn't as simple as that. Some of us were saying that before the Bengals game turned around. Those weapons are all there. They're all in full force. And over the last three, I have the stats here. Over the last 3 games, Joe Burrow has 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. After starting the season off the first 4 weeks with only 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, you're seeing a very high increase in his play. I think his calf injury is finally healthy. Luka, looking at this matchup from the Bills defensively, how confident are you in the Bills defense coming up with a scheme that can slow down the Bengals?
Less than ideal.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where Joe Burrow is finally feeling himself, I think, a little bit, and he's quite literally one of those individuals you don't want him feeling confident because he clearly is someone that can absolutely thrive in that environment. He wants to be, he wants to feel that he can be confident, he can be comfortable in his own arrogance in a little bit. And I don't mean arrogance in a negative light with Joe Burrow. I think it's all positive when it comes to that, especially with an elite competitor like himself. So when he feels comfortable with his physical ability now, I think that just fuels the fire that is his mental confidence. And he believes that he can do everything that he knows he can do. And then when you have all the weapons around him, such as a Jamar Chase, a T. Higgins, and so on and so forth, it makes any opposition's day a long day. And the Bills just don't have a lot of game wreckers in their own right. They just don't have enough talent right now that's healthy to kind of counterpunch that. So it's going to take a Sean McDermott masterclass on defense in order to hinder, limit, whatever you want to call it, the Bengals offense, because I do believe right now Burrow is feeling himself as he should. We saw a great performance out of him in the offense in San Fran, which San Fran, in my opinion, would be a definite better defense than the Bills in their own right. So it's just one of those things where you just need the Bills defense, in my mind, to kind of create a couple stall outs and just hope that the Bills offense can do their job and kind of break out of their shell they seem to have been in the past few weeks, and they don't start slow, hopefully, because I just don't think there really is stopping the Bengals offense. It's going to be just hoping you can create a stall out here or there so that they don't put up, kind of 30 plus on you and your offense can do their thing.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. But I think what we need to rely on is the Bills offense to have the same kind of day where the only time they get stopped is where they make a mistake and make this come down to a turnover game. I was trying to find Aaron Schatz' stat that he put out this week, and I just can't find it. It's about, oh, here it is. Perfect timing. This is Aaron Schatz, the ringleader of DVOA. Over the first 4 weeks of the season, the Bills defense was number 2 in DVOA, and the Bengals were number 25. Over the last 4 weeks, since the Bills had so many injuries, the Bills defense is number 28. So I do think, while trends are important in how you're playing right now, over the last 4 weeks, the Bills defense has been a bottom 5 defense, at least by the DVOA metric, which I subscribe to. I think there's some validity to that. Now, there's something to be said for the fact where the Bills playing down to the competition. They had some unique circumstances. They had a London game. They came back and played a Giants team that were starting a bunch of backups, and then they played a Buccaneers team on Thursday night. They were out of their normal routine quite a bit. But I do think that it's going to be a challenge for this Bills team to slow down the Bengals. But I do have some ideas for how they can do that. One, what we have seen from Joe Burrow over these last 4 games, or really the last 3 games, the last 4 weeks, has been an interesting shift. In the first 4 weeks of the season, Joe Burrow had the fastest time to throw in the NFL. So it was snap, throw. He was even ahead of Tua. And that, while that's good, while that makes it tough on the defense, in the last 3 games, Joe Burrow has fallen to 9th in the NFL, and his time to throw is kind of more middle of the pack, 2.55 seconds. And while in general, him holding onto the ball sounds like a great thing for the Bills, Joe Burrow actually thrives when he holds onto the ball long because he's extending the play. He moves in the pocket at a very expert level, and he can actually run out of the pocket and extend plays that way. You saw that several times against the Niners last week, and that is a sign in my mind that his calf injury is behind him. Over that stretch, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The other thing I will tell you about this Bengals offense is they are not ashamed to tell you what they like to do. They very much funnel their offense through 2 players. They funnel their offense through Jamar Chase, and they funnel their offense through Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has 112 rushes on the year. The next highest rusher on the Bengals, Travion Williams, has 7, 112 to 7. Jamar Chase leads the entire NFL in target share, and he has a 33.6 target share, 37.1 in the red zone. They don't hide what they're trying to do. They get the ball into the hands of their playmakers. What I think the Bills can do to try to slow down the Bengals, I don't think there's a recipe to stop the Bengals. One thing I think that the Bills have in their bag this week, Luka, that they didn't have in the playoff game, and I did tweet this out a couple hours ago, is from our podcast account, Bills Chat Pod on Twitter, is they have the Micah Hyde Jordan Poyer combination. They did not have that for the playoff game. And what Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer allow you to do on defense is what we talked about with Jesse Bates and Von Bell. Change the picture post snap. And Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer have been the best combination of that since they have become a tandem in 2017. Them being able to change the post snap picture, making Joe Burrow hesitate, just that extra fraction of a second can be all you need to get an advantage. Now, will it be enough of an advantage? I don't know. I don't think this is as simple as a puzzle as Tua, where you get Tua off of his first read and his numbers sink. Joe Burrow comes off of his first read and his numbers are still excellent. I think what you'll also see from the Bills this week, Luka, is a lot of simulated blitzes. I do not expect the Bills to blitz much this week. Joe Burrow absolutely slices and dices it. I think you'll see the Bills show blitz a lot, make it look like they're going to blitz. Maybe you'll see someone like Bernard or Poyer or Taron Johnson come through, but that will be coupled with someone like a Gregory Rousseau or a Leonard Floyd dropping into coverage, so they are never rushing more than 4 any given down. But it's that simulated pressure that I think can at least make a Bengals offensive line that I still think is average and not much better than that, question what they're seeing, and maybe you can lead to some negative plays for the defense. I don't think there's one recipe here, Luka, that will stop the Bengals. I think the goal for a game like this is you slow them down enough, you win enough possessions in the red zone to be able to outscore them. Those are the two keys, I think, for the Bills. One, change the post-snap picture, try to confuse Burrow, much easier said than done. He's excellent. And then simulated pressure, because like all quarterbacks, his numbers when under pressure dip down. He has an 80% quarterback rating under pressure. Everything else is 95 plus or above. So those are my two keys for the Bills on defense. And then we can talk a little bit about who we expect to play this week out of guys like Linval Joseph and Rasul Douglas. Any final thoughts on the Bills defensive matchups you like?
Yeah, I mean, I like you bringing up the fact that they need to disguise, they need to create pre-snap, post-snap kind of confusion, and they have that tool in their bag this go around compared to the playoff game where they didn't. Because in my opinion, and we've heard it from other individuals in football circles, I think Joe Burrow might be the best quarterback against zone in the league. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
just always understands zonal assignments, where the windows and pockets will be, and then exactly what he needs to do in order to throw into those windows, whether it's extending the play as you brought up, but just by moving around a pocket, and or just timing a throw so perfectly into a window, understanding a Jamar Chase, a T Higgins will be there at the point of which it gets to them. So it's one of those things where that's definitely a big concern with the Bills, since that is primarily what they run. So you just need to be able to create enough question marks, confusion, disguise, however you want to phrase it, pre and post snap, so that Burrow can't just be confident in what he's seen pre snap when he has a moment to breathe, so that when the play is developing, it's not exactly what he thinks he's seen, and you just kind of can at least stay on the same footing with him, if not a step ahead, and hopefully not let them get too far ahead. Because, yeah, this is kind of one of those matchups where you want to make it difficult for them as much as possible. But at the end of the day, they're probably still going to find their way into the red zone on you. And then from there, when, kind of the over the top looks are no longer there, the field is no longer able to be stretched, you try to win those then and there and hold them to at best field goals, and so on and so forth. So it's just going to be one of those kind of chess games ultimately when it comes to both the Bengals offense and the Bills defense. And you just got to try to hold your own and just hold on. And then hopefully the defense doesn't kind of come out with a slow start like we've seen in the past or whatever it might be. And they can at least do their job accordingly.
Jacob Spears asks who's going to be at cornerback for the Bills. And that is a good question, because what we saw this week is when the Bills signed Linval Joseph to their roster, they put Kaiir Elam on injured reserve. And we know last week against the Bucks, Kaiir Elam was a healthy scratch, or maybe unhealthy scratch, since he went on IR in favor of Josh Norman. And then at the trade deadline this week, the Bills traded a third-round pick for Rasul Douglas and a fifth-round pick from the Green Bay Packers. And then on Friday, Bill's starting quarterback, Christian Benford, was a limited participant with a hamstring injury, but he does have no injury designation for the game. And Luka, I think that's key. So unless something pops up tomorrow on the injury report where the Bills change his status to questionable, I'm going to assume that Christian Benford is good to go for this game. I'm going to assume the Bills' two starting cornerbacks for this game are going to be Christian Benford and Dane Jackson. My guess at this time is that Rasul Douglas will play the Josh Norman role while he still ramps up into the Bills defense, that backup boundary corner. Although I would not be surprised if the Bills mix him in, drive here, drive there. It really comes down to his familiarity with the scheme. I listened to his press conference earlier this week, and he said it's very similar to the Packers scheme. It's really all about language and verbiage. in my mind, and we can talk about the impact of these trades here, maybe coming up in the next segment, but that would be my prediction on how they handle the cornerback situation. I'll let you handle that, and then maybe we can talk about a larger Rasul Douglas conversation. How do you think the cornerback situation shakes out this week?
Yeah, I share feelings just as you do when it comes to who will most likely be starting. It's Benford and Dane for sure, just because of their in-house. They understand what's going on. Rasul Douglas has been here for all of 4 or 5 days. Um, I I want Rasul Douglas to start as fast as possible. I just think that's too fast. I will not complain if he starts
Me
by any
neither.
stretch. Big Rasul Douglas fans over here. But it just seems too quick. I would love to see kind of that mix in situation that you described just to get his feet wet in this defense and gameplay. It's a big game to be doing that with, but overall, I think he's a great talent and he's been having a good year in his own right, a great year in his own right, that maybe he can pick up on his own. If he can make a play with his limited snap count in a rotation, he will be big time for us moving down with the remainder of the season. And Dane Jackson will eventually go back to a depth role, as Rasul will be ultimately the main starter opposite of Benford. But this game just seems a little too quick overall. I could see a rotation, but yeah, I share the same thought with you. I think just for this week, we will most likely see Dane Jackson opposite of Benford.
Yeah, and John Robert says Benford was limited. He was, John, we talked about that a little bit, but the fact that he has no injury designation carried into this game tells me he's probably going to be full go for this game. Who knows what it is, but if he'd have been listed as questionable with a late injury on Friday, I'd be a lot more concerned than I am right now. I would very much pay attention to anything that pops up on the Saturday injury report. Gary Park with the question, why is Cincinnati getting so much credit for beating a Niners team that lost to the Jets and the Vikings the 2 prior weeks? The Niners lost to the Browns and the Vikings, but the point remains. I would just say this, Gary. One, I think when you look at the entire body of work of the regular season, particularly in the first part of the regular season, the Niners looked like a juggernaut. And yeah, up until the point they played Cincinnati, they did have 2 losses. Both of those losses were 1-score games. They lost to the Browns on a missed field goal at the buzzer that would have won them the game. So I think you could kind of do that with almost any team. Miami right now is the flavor of the NFL. And it's like, well, who have they beaten? The 2 times they've played a team that's in the playoffs currently, they've gotten steamrolled. So, I think the fact that Cincinnati was coming off of a bye certainly helped them. And now if you want to flip the script and say the Bills are coming off of a mini bye, or the Bengals are coming back from a tough game on the West Coast, which is something Luka pointed out in our schedule release show when we did the predictions, that was an advantage for the Bills here. But yeah, in general, I think the Niners do deserve a lot of credit. I think there is some validity, though, Gary, that they caught the Niners at the right time. All right, Rasul Douglas, you said you expect him to be a starting cornerback. Luka, we were both thrilled when the Bills made that move. Is it controversial for me to say that I think Rasul Douglas is going to be an upgrade the rest of the season over what Tre'Davious White would have been had he played the entire season? I realize there's some insensitivity there to that. I totally understand people might flinch when they hear that, but this is just about football. I think the Bills have, if you sub out Tre'Davious White and sub in Rasul Douglas, I think it's an upgrade whether you want to hear it or not. Are you with me?
Um, yeah, I'm trying not to be insensitive here. What Trey White was right before the injury was not at the level of what we have seen recently with Rasul Douglas. And so, yes, ultimately, he is an upgrade from what we had with Trey White of late. I think the one thing, though, of course, with Trey White is the person in the locker room and who he is as a leader for this team cannot be replaced, will not be replaced. And that is what it is. What's nice about Rasul Douglas, and of course, a lot of the stuff immediately after the trade was he was a leader for the Packers. He was a big voice for the Packers, stuff like that. That doesn't just immediately translate over to the Bills. And I think I saw a couple sprinkles of people saying, oh, he's going to be a great leader for this team. It's like that's not quite how it works. You kind of have to earn your way into a locker room, but it just shows that he's a good character. Like he is a high character individual. And I think that just will be absorbed well and welcomed by the locker room. And that's great. It's just as an actual player on the field and player output, yeah, I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 1,000%. I think Rasul Douglas is an upgrade play wise than what we had of late with Trey, just due to what Trey had been dealing with. And then Rasul is playing at a very high level at this point in time. And I think he is one of the better and more underrated corners. I'm not saying he's a top 10 guy, but overall, he can give you high level play. And the funny part is, Rasul Douglas is always that corner to me, just from watching over recently and stuff like that, because I seem to always end up watching Packers games. Um, he's one of those guys. He's like one of the best curl corners I've ever seen. Like, if you are running curls and comebacks, I don't know how he does it as well as he does. He can flip his hips back to you quicker than a lot of other corners I've ever seen. And the thing that makes it awesome and why I kind of would love to see him come in here in flashes, one of the things the Bengals love to do is run T. Higgins on curls and comebacks. Like, that is a staple of theirs. And if you start recognizing that and you go, okay, let's just get him out there and get Rasul, who has that size and length to him, and then the real quick twitch ability to play those, I think that's where he will thrive and actually be able to limit those kind of 15-yard chunk plays that T. Higgins seems to get on everyone when they need it. So I am excited for Rasul Douglas in this defense. I think he will fit the mold of a McDermott defense very, very well, just in theory. And it's definitely exciting to see the prospect of him and Benford opposite of each other, kind of just these bigger, lengthy bodies that can really do great things for you on both sides. And it's not like they're going to play the matchup game. They just play their sides and they're going to play them well accordingly.
Yeah, and I liked the trade. And honestly, I said the thing about Trey White, and our guy Roy Collins is giving me trouble, which I appreciate, Roy. Really, the biggest thing is he an upgrade over Dane Jackson, which I think almost certainly he is. And that's the biggest key, is he's going to be there with Benford. And Costa says, you want Jamar to go crazy. No, I don't think that's the point. I think he was thinking that, you can somewhat neutralize T. Higgins with what he likes to do with his route tree with Rasul Douglas. And then you can really focus your attention on Jamar, who has such a high target share in the Bengals offense, 33%, which leads the NFL. Yeah. Our guy, John Robert, Rasul has 10 interceptions in the last 3 games. I would challenge that stat, John. I think we would have heard about that. That would probably have led the way. But yeah, I think Roy's right. 10 interceptions in the last 3 seasons. He does take the ball away very well. Let's talk about another move the Bills made this week, Luka. They brought in Linval Joseph. I will just say, on the heels of the New England game, going back 2 games now, I was convinced that the Bills had a one technique problem on defense that was going to tank their season, because Daquan Jones was gone. It seemed like Jordan Phillips was their favorite idea. One technique. Why? I have no idea, because I think he's proven time and time again he is not a one technique despite what he looks like. He is very much a situational 3 technique, and that's where he thrives. In the New England game, he looked completely out of sorts as a one technique. And the combination of him being out of the play many times and Dorian Williams biting the cheese that Belichick fed him on offense with the motions just did the Bills in that day. And then Puna Ford against Tampa Bay came in and I thought played a really strong game. And I understand Tampa Bay does not have a strong running game, but to me, it was more about the intensity and the consistency that Puna Ford showed in taking on double teams, staying stout against double teams, keeping linebackers clean, the things you want from a one technique on first and second down. I feel like Puna Ford is still the best one technique on this team, but now Linval Joseph comes into the mix as a guy that played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games for the Eagles last year, plus 3 playoff games. And he was their primary one technique. I think they have solidified that spot as well as you possibly can, with 1, limited resources, and 2, understanding the fact that you're replacing a player in Daquan Jones that you had no real shot of replacing.
He's a big experienced body. Big is an understatement. Big experienced body that, yeah, as you said, with what you could do at this point in the league year, in the season, and everything of that nature, with the limited resources that the Bills have, it's kind of a best kind of case situation, and what you can bring in and what you can do for that position. It's one of those things. I don't think it moves the needle a whole heck of a lot. It's just a nice thing to have. Someone asked me this week how I felt about it although I was still trying to just catch up on jet lag, but someone asked me about it, and I was like, look, it doesn't move the needle for me at all. It's not something that where I'm like going to be very happy about, but at the same time, I completely understand the move, and it definitely feels like a good move to be made because you just have now another good option for that 1T. You have another option when you really only had one option at this point, which was your break glass in case of emergency option in the first place in Puna Ford. So it's just one of those things where it's nice to find that third option, we'll call it, because Daquan, of course, is your primary that is no longer available. So it's nice to find a third option with the limited resources that we had and the limited ability to do something about it. I'm not going to complain about it by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's a good, solid move. It just is at the end of the day. I'm not going to be sitting here on Sunday night wondering how often he's going to play. I don't look at him as that kind of player. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a healthy scratch, at least for this week. You know,
Right.
it's just not one of those things where I'm going to be looking at his output down the road even. I think he's more one of those situations where you bring him in, you'll use him in, certain gameplay situations. Does the week dictate you have 2-1 techniques on the roster? Is he more suitable for the offensive line you're going to play? One of those situations. I think he's, what is he, Josh? 35, 36, maybe even 37. I know he's in his mid 30s. He might be pushing but
35.
okay, 35. It's like he's not that kind of guy where you're going to really lean heavily on, but hopefully he can give you some meaningful snaps if and when you need it. And he showed that he could do it recently last season, like you pointed out with Philadelphia.
And like we saw earlier in the year when Puna Ford was inactive, a team really only needs to carry one technique on game day. There's just no need in the 2023 pass happy NFL to have two of them up if they are one-dimensional, one technique. So unless there is a rash of injuries at defensive tackle, I would expect Linval Joseph to be inactive. And the other thing is, while Rasul Douglas has to learn the system, he's in football shape. He's been playing football for the Packers since this summer in training camp, and he's been playing games. Linval Joseph and the next guy we're going to talk about, Leonard Fournette, or literally coming in off of their couch and have to get back into football shape. But very quickly, Joshua Torres, does anyone know what Milano's soon post was? Joshua, we can confirm that was not Matt Milano's Facebook page. We looked into it, and it was unfortunately not him. He's not a guy that does social media as it is. He does a little bit on Instagram, but that was not him. So I would not get overly excited about that. But some of the folks on Twitter, like Banged Up Bills, Thigh Doctor, have insinuated that they do think there is an outside shot that Matt Milano can come back by the end of the season, which I will say this. I would not get your hopes up about that. I don't think it's worth it because I don't think you'll get the best version of him. But the fact that that's even a possibility, and you can rule out the fact that he didn't also tear his ACL and obviously nothing with the Achilles, that is a win. That is a huge win. It's a leg fracture. It's a big deal. But I think you can at least calm your fears that this is going to be a situation like we saw with Tre'Davious White 2 years ago and Von Miller last year, where it's like, okay, we know we lost him for this season, but how much of next season is going to be impacted? And when will he be back to the Matt Milano we're used to? I think there's a very good chance that Matt Milano is back to his premium form by the start of next year. And that's about the best case scenario when you factor in how low we all felt in Jacksonville when he was laying on that field. All right, Luka, the third move the Bills made this week was they signed Leonard Fournette to their practice squad. And I tweeted out something about running back efficiency, and I was like, hey, we all made fun of the Dalvin Cook signing with the Jets, and look where he fell in running back efficiency in the bottom left quadrant, which is not quadrant where you want to be. And then right below Dalvin Cook's name was Leonard Fournette. Now, look, I fully understand that the Jets signing Dalvin Cook to an $8 million deal is not the same thing as the Bills signing Leonard Fournette to their practice squad. That it's apples to oranges. But I do think we should temper expectations, even though he is a big name. But what I will say, Luka, my read on this is twofold. One, I think that probably means Damian Harris is not coming back, or at least there is some fear that he's not going to be able to come back in his best form. I will also say that as much as I am excited about James Cook, he has struggled in pass protection. Latavius Murray's been used in a lot of those situations, but that has not been his calling card in the NFL in his long career. I would not be stunned if a couple weeks down the line, once he gets into game shape, if Leonard Fournette does take over for Latavius Murray as that second running back active on game day, because I think he brings more to the passing game, primarily as somebody who can protect Josh Allen, But overall, to me, this is not like a fantasy football threat to James Cook. And I think if the Bills have it their way, Leonard Fournette's impact on this offense as far as statistics go will be very minimal.
Yeah, I look at more as just there's something to be said about Damian Harris's situation with the signing of Leonard Fournette. That's points 1 and 2 in my mind of why the signing occurred. I will say, yeah, the pass pro situation in the backfield is not great in its current state. And when you bring in a guy with as big of legs, as thick of thighs, that is Leonard Fournette, that should hopefully help. Although, just having a big ass doesn't exactly help you in pass pro, but hey, it doesn't hurt either. It's just one of those things where it's good to get depth in. It's similar. I looked at the signing of Leonard Fournette very similarly as the signing of Linval Joseph. It's a nice option to be able to bring in with your limited resources for something that looks to be somewhat of a need in a depth position or at a depth role for this team. I have no issues with it whatsoever. It would be something if you get some meaningful snaps out of them, depending on the situation. I would be far less surprised if Leonard Fournette gets a more regular run than a Linval Joseph. Just kind of like what you pointed out, he might be better in pass pro. He might be better just as a receiver out of the backfield anyways. And it's not as James Cook. I'm talking about Latavius Murray, of course.
Yep.
But it's just one of those things where I'm not going to kind of microscope this and really want to see something big out of Leonard Fournette. You just weren't seeing that late as of late. There's a reason he is no longer with the Bucks and they moved on and are just primarily with Rachaad White. Shout out, Forks Up, ASU. So overall, it's just one of those things where it's good to have depth. Hopefully he can play some meaningful snaps down the road and maybe he can find kind of a role with this team where they're kind of needing it in the backfield. But yeah, it's not a threat to James Cook in my mind. It's not a threat to anything in that particular field with production wise in the offense, but it's a good thing to have with the limited resources.
All right, Luka. Well, it is time. It is time to make our predictions on this big Bills-Bengals game. The Bengals are at home. They are a 2-point favorite. Before we get into our predictions, what does that spread say to you, Luka? Because I will tell you, when the game first opened up and the Bills were 1.5-point favorites, I was stunned, quite honestly, because I think Vegas is very much, at least betting lines tend to be a lot more reactive to what have we seen lately. And I don't think the Bills have looked great in any of their games since they beat the Dolphins. I think even in their wins, they've been a little suspect, at least from the national perception. And the Bengals have now won 3 in a row, and 2 of those against teams that people take really serious, and the Seahawks and the Niners. And then that line quickly flipped. But I will tell you, I'm even a little surprised that the Bengals aren't getting the full 3-point home points that most home teams get. So you're the betting guy on this show. What does that line say to you? And what does it say to you about the game? What Vegas thinks about this game, and just anything you want to throw in there?
Well, I don't know if my opinion truly matters right now. I'm cold as ice right
We'll
now in
get
the
into that.
NFL. Hey, NHL, we're doing good and things like that, but boy, the NFL's been tough. What that line tells me really is that I think just Vegas truly respects Josh Allen and respects the Bills historically just being an overall very good team. Even though they do have the injuries, they aren't trending as greatly right now. I think the Bengals are one of the hottest trending teams at this moment. So yeah, that's where it does become surprising that they are only 2-point favorites at this point in time against the Bills. To me, what it feels like is Vegas is just trying to really get people to buy into the Bengals stuff. You are seeing public money all over the Bengals line right now at this point in time. And I think that's by design overall, just because the Bengals really are one of those hot teams. I will just add this, Josh. This has been one of those years where you cannot go with the hottest team in the league at that point in time when it comes to betting. Just general rule of thumb. When a team is really hot, the Bills were at this point, the Dolphins putting up 70 on the Broncos, they kind of get absolutely steamrolled by the Bills. The Bills now are becoming that darling. All of a sudden, they lose in London to the Jags. There's this trend that when you are that high trending team, the media darling at the time, whatever it is, it seems like things are happening. So I wonder if it's a Vegas adjustment just a little bit, where they're not truly sold that the Bengals will be able to pull away in this one, but still they like them at home just due to how well they're playing of late.
Seth, thanks for tuning in. You got here late, totally understand. Friday nights are busy. If you want to go back and watch the show, by the way, YouTube will have the whole thing up. But we do not expect Leonard Fournette to play. Reading the tea leaves from his comments this week, he even said he has to ramp up and get into football shape. And I would imagine that Leonard Fournette's probably going to be a game day inactive for at least a couple more weeks until he can prove that he's ready to roll. And then you might see him get that game day elevation and maybe even take the spot that's held by Ty Johnson. That would make a lot of sense. But no, I would not think that Leonard Fournette's going to factor into this game. You know, it's funny because when it comes to betting, oops, we clicked at the right time. Say, oh God, you handle that. When it comes to betting, my general rule of thumb with betting is if I look at a line and my instinct is, holy cow, that's way too obvious, click it. Like generally, I go the other way. And even the Bengals -2 is like, I don't even have to cover a full field goal. Really? All I need to do the Bengals to win by home at home by 2 points to push. If they win by a field goal, I win. Like in my mind, the way the Bills have looked, the way the Bengals looked last week, that's a no-brainer. So then I'm thinking to myself, okay, why? Well, Vegas knows everything Luka just said. Vegas knows that less than a month ago, the Bills were the hottest team in the league. The Bills were the team that took on a Dolphins team that scored 70 points and then ran them out of the building. Vegas knows that if you make Josh Allen more than a 3-point underdog, you're probably going to lose money. So I think this says a lot about the Bills. I think there are some advantages in this game built in for the Bills. The Bengals played a Sunday late afternoon game on the West Coast. The Bills have had a mini bye since last Thursday. There's a motivation factor from the Bills standpoint. The Bengals were the team that ended their season. So I think there are some things working in the Bills' favor, but it is prediction time, Luka. I like Roy Collins' rule of thumb. My rule on betting is I don't bet. Prediction time, Luka. One of our best shows, at least as most downloaded shows, was the time we talked about the Bills' playoff loss to the Bengals. We got into some big picture stuff. And then we did a schedule show, and I said, look, Luka, I don't need the Bills to beat the Bengals on October 5th. But what I do not need is the Bills to get blown out by the Bengals, because that's what happened in the playoffs. That's what looked like was going to happen in the DeMar Hamlin Monday night game, at least early on, as my 2-year-old son just came into the room, and boy, are things about to get interesting. But I don't want the Bills to get blown out. But Luka, I'm going to mute my mic and figure this situation out. Who wins this game and why?
So I've been kind of going back and forth on this game. It's just a very, very interesting one. It's a coin flip one. That's what I led this whole show off with. I really genuinely don't have a good pulse on this game. What I will say is this: the vibe that I've been getting from both sides and stuff when you follow it is I feel like the Bengals are almost trying to create this chip. They're trying to create and, remind themselves, hey, the Bills said if it wasn't snowing, they would have won. And it's things of that nature. And it's almost like, look, you can manufacture motivation, and I believe in all of that. I just think it's almost a little bit of a stretch, especially with how well you're playing. I feel like an elite team such as the Bengals right now, when all things are going well, you don't need to manufacture everything. You should almost just be like, we're going to continue to do what we've been doing because we're doing it at an elite level. And then with that, I do think those things are being heard by the Bills, and they've kind of had this is a big motivational game for them. And I really did feel kind of early on in the week that the Bengals would end up winning this game. It would be a highly competitive game, back and forth, kind of team with the ball last wins. It's one of those ones where at the end of the day, I get this vibe just based on how the NFL landscape's been happening, as a whole has been kind of happening week by week, how things have been going for the Bills, how things have been going for the Bengals. It just seems like one of those games where this seems like the kind of game where Josh Allen and the offense can actually get at the Bengals. There are opportunities to be had. And once, and then like, as I was thinking about all of this, the final point I will make here is the most fun stat I've heard about this matchup and everything like that was one I heard today, actually. In 20 regular season Sunday night football games, the Bengals as a whole are 3-17 overall. The last time the Bengals won a regular season Sunday night football game was 2004 against the Dolphins. It has been a long time since the Bengals have won a Sunday night game, regular season wise. They don't seem to have success on NBC, it seems like. And it's just one of those things where I do think Josh Allen, outside of the Monday night game we saw to open up the season, I think Josh Allen performs well in primetime positions. I think the Bills perform well in the lights. And I do believe the Bengals team does as well. But I think the Bills will overcome this one. I do think Josh Allen will win. And I'm going to say the Bills win 31-27. You're going to have to unmute there, Josh.
There we go. Doing some gymnastics with the kid in the lap. He is very excited, although he might get kind of loud. All right. Well, look, I hear everything you're saying about motivation. It's annoying the way the Bengals are generating it. Like, let's get those refunds going and all that stuff. And then the Tyler Boyd stuff this week. But at the end of the day, I do think there's some matchups here that favor the Bengals that do concern me. I don't think Taron Johnson has been fantastic in coverage this year, and I do worry about Tyler Boyd. I do worry about how the Bills will do stopping the run when they bring Jordan Poyer in as a dime backer. We've been seeing more of that in recent weeks. They're going to go light. Will the Bengals commit to running the ball? I feel good about the under in this game. It's 49. I think both of these defenses are going to make the other offensives drive long drives, keep it in front of you. So I think that'll lead to a slower game. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take the Bengals to win this game 26-23. Just a gut feeling. I would not be surprised if the Bills win this game. I think there's a very good shot the Bills do win this game. But at least for my prediction, I am going to predict that the Bengals come out of this game with a win and that the Bills fall to 5-4 on the season. All right. Well, speaking of predictions, Luka, it is time for what has been a little bit of an unsuccessful segment on our show. This week's edition of Luka's Locks, as I'm going to shove my kid out of here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, it's got to be difficult to balance a 2-year-old while trying to do a live show. I can only imagine.
It's a little difficult. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of dealing with a blitz right now, but also dealing with bad coverage. So we shall see. But Luka, on the season, you are 8-16. But hey, that's why they play the games. We have a brand new week, and this season, this Sunday kicks off with a beautiful matchup between the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs, the Tyreek Hill Bowl. What better excuse to get back on track than picking against one of the two teams we hate? So which way do you see this game going in your first bet on Luka's Locks?
It's a beautiful thing that the best game of the weekend slate is honestly the breakfast game. It's the morning game. It's the one we're going to have to. I think it was Florio in a prediction show with Chris Sims where he said if there was ever a 9:30 game that everyone should make sure they wake up and watch because a lot of times they are not the greatest, this is the one to make sure you wake up and watch. It's almost just too good to disappoint. It just makes no sense that this game would disappoint. I'd find it hard to believe that this game would disappoint. With all of that in mind, I will say this. It's you keep doing it again. I don't know if you're on delay or not over there, but with all of that in mind, when I kept looking at this game and when I was looking at the slate this week, as Josh pointed out, it's been rough of late. I am 1-8-0, a negative 9.8 unit in the past 3 weeks. One of the coldest stretches of my short and yet too long gambling career. And so it was kind of one of those situations where I would look at a game, I would try to get a feel for a game. I try to get a feel for where the teams are at, what everything feels, and then maybe kind of fade myself a little bit. And I even made a little fun graphic here where this is going to be the week 9 fades. It's not literally the week 9 fades, but it will kind of, it's one of those ones where you kind of second guess your thoughts. Similar to what Josh said, if a line seemed too good, maybe I need to be going the other way. And I'm going to start with, I like Kansas City to cover 1.5 against Miami. Everything tells me that Miami should be winning this game. The Chiefs, especially on offense, are not trending upwards. They are kind of in a weird position right now, coming off of one of the worst performances Mahomes has had in his Chiefs career to date. And it's one of those things where then Miami is trending so highly. Miami travels out to Germany on Monday. Kansas City didn't travel out to Germany until last night. Everything to me tells me that Miami not only should like cover 2 points, which you can get them at +2 in certain places, but they should be able to win outright. there's just something about the Chiefs that I will never think that they will lose 2 games in a row. And there's now almost something to prove against a high octane offense that is Miami. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but we have Patrick Mahomes. Tyreek Hill is on the other side, and Mahomes wants to remind him who actually might be the best quarterback he played with that isn't Tua Tagovailoa. I like the Chiefs this week. I love it's going to be the best game of the weekend slate. I just don't see how it can't be. But I think the Chiefs definitely cover 1.5 points. I think they win against Miami. And Miami is just going to be one of those teams right now still that they are a very, very, very good team. But when they come up against the likes of the Eagles, the Bills, and the Chiefs, they can't quite get it all together yet to kind of get over the hill and figure it out. So give me the Chiefs minus 1.5.
Chiefs minus 1.5. You know, it's interesting because the Miami Dolphins, they don't even have to win against a good opponent to make the playoffs. When you look at the rest of the season schedule, while the Bills are going to be playing Miami and the Chiefs and the Eagles and the Chargers and the Bengals, the Dolphins really have the Bills, the Chiefs. I think they play the Ravens, and then otherwise it's pretty smooth sailing. So we'll see. I'm with you. I think the Chiefs defense is excellent. I think they will have a plan for slowing down the Dolphins. And I'm also with you. I would not bet on the Chiefs looking as bad as they looked 2 weeks in a row. I think this is a get right spot for them, even in the randomness that is an international game. All right, Luka. Second game on your list is another beauty. We have an NFC East matchup. The Dallas Cowboys traveling to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. In many ways, this is the game of the week. If it's not Bills Bengals, these two teams have been in a stronghold for NFC East superiority for the last couple years. The Cowboys have been unable to win in Philadelphia. This would be a big statement spot for them if they're able to get that done. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, I mean, this is yet another beautiful game on the slate, and I think it's one of those ones where it's kind of got a similar vibe to Miami, Kansas City, although it's also got the divisional kind of rivalry on top of it. But it's a similar vibe where there's 2 teams. There's one team that I think is not running on all cylinders, although they're not quite in the downs that is Kansas City after coming off a bad loss. But I don't think Philly's kind of running on all cylinders. I think they're still kind of they're leaving meat on the bone when it comes to where their offense can be and where the team can be at as a whole. I think their defense has been kind of a little bit lesser than what they want it to be. And then the Cowboys, I mean, they came off a game against the Rams that effectively solidified that the Rams actually aren't that good. I definitely got that one wrong. And the Cowboys can beat up on bad teams. Like they show you when playing bad teams, they don't just win, they dominate. And the point right there is made. I think when they play bad teams, they dominate. The problem with the Cowboys is they can be kind of out physicaled in a game. They can be manhandled. And if there's any team that can outplay you physically, it is the Philadelphia Eagles. In Philly kind of just being at home in a divisional game where they need to kind of put their stamp on things and remind the division, remind the conference and everything once again who they are. This is a time to do it. And I think the Cowboys are definitely feeling good about themselves. But overall, I can't bet anything more than just Eagles -3 against the Cowboys. It just I wanted to take the Cowboys +3. It's a divisional game, and you would expect it to be tight, everything like that. My mind was saying the Cowboys are feeling good right now. I think Jalen Hurts isn't even at 100% right now. So it's kind of like one of those things where my brain was kind of like tipping, okay, I got burnt by the Cowboys. The Cowboys do look good. I think they're starting to get back to form again. Dak's actually playing decent. So then I flipped it. I was like, but how in the world in my own right could I take Cowboys +3? And actually, I really do like Eagles to cover 3 at home. At worst, you're going to get a push. It might be a walk-off field goal, but I think the Eagles actually take care of business against the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are the type of team that can be mauled over by a big physical team like the Eagles. They just don't match up well against that. We saw it even with a lesser team in Arizona, where Arizona was dominating the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. So overall, I just think the Eagles do get it done and cover those 3 points at home.
At the risk of sounding like Stephen A. Smith, this just feels like a Dak Prescott crumble spot too. And I do think there's something to be said for the Super Bowl hangover for the team that loses. The Eagles might be the most disrespected 7-1 team in the history of the sport because they've had such an easy schedule and they haven't looked great on their path to 7-1. They barely beat the Commanders twice. They struggled to beat the Vikings. The Vikings haven't been great. They struggled on opening day to beat the Patriots, but they've gotten all these games to the win column. Their one loss was against the Jets, but the Bills have seen firsthand what that Jets defense can do, albeit without DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. When they played a team that is considered an A-list team, the Dolphins, they completely outclassed them on both sides of the ball. And quite honestly, the Eagles have nowhere to hide now because as easy as their schedule has been, their next 6 games, Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills, 49ers, Cowboys, Seahawks. We are going to learn a lot about the Eagles. I am with you. I think they start off that 6-game stretch with a win over the Dallas Cowboys. I am riding with you on that one. And then the last game on your Luka's locks is a game that I don't think is overly attractive to the viewing public, but boy, is it intriguing from just a drama standpoint because one, the New York Giants get their starting quarterback back in Daniel Jones. They also get their star left tackle back, we think, in Andrew Thomas. The Giants will be about as fully formed as they have been since the season started. And on the other side of the ball, they have a team that this week fired their head coach, fired their general manager, and benched their starting quarterback who's making mega $1 million. The Las Vegas Raiders will be starting Aiden O'Connell at quarterback over the New York Giants. All of that being said, despite firing their head coach, firing their general manager, and benching their quarterback, the Raiders find themselves as favorites to win a football game because that's how bad the Giants have been. The Raiders are 1.5-point favorites. Luka, how do you see this game going?
This is one of the more interesting games of the weekend. I think you capped it so beautifully, Josh. I'm not going to do too long of a winded response here. What I will just say is this. Everything, and I mean everything, tells you you should take the Giants in this game. Everything across the board. The Giants are getting a starting quarterback back. The Raiders are going to a backup. The Giants are getting a healthier offensive line. The Raiders still have what they have, and it's not that good. It's just one of those ones where you're just like, I don't understand how you can't take the Giants plus points. It's just one of those things. It should be take the Giants money line because you're getting it at plus money. That's just how good of a line it seems like. The thing that my brain just would not get past in this game, Josh, is that Josh McDaniels is a god-awful coach. He is not a head coach in this league. Hopefully, we never see him in a head coaching position again. Antonio Pierce is one of those guys. He was actually on the coaching staff at ASU for a while. He was the DC for them for a stretch under the Herm Edwards era, which was something. And he was actually kind of the bright spot of that coaching staff. And you could see that even offensive personnel were going over to Antonio Pierce for conversations to be had in between drives. And there's something to be said with that because I think that's just players flock to Antonio Pierce for reasons. He is now in the interim head coaching position. And with that, on top of interim head coaches seem to always win their debuts, Josh, give me the Raiders -1.5 against the Giants. It doesn't make sense at all. You shouldn't be doing this. But there are just so many reasons to take the Giants, and public money is, I believe, on the Giants as well, although it might be 50-50 at this point. I've seen it kind of going crazy both ways. Antonio Pierce, I think, is going to get this team going in a positive direction after they've been stumbling left and right. And I think he is just a guy in an interim position that will be able to get the team going and will be able to overcome just what is going on with the Giants, who also did lose Leonard Williams for whatever it's worth. And I think you're going to see Jacobs on the ground a little bit. They do give up already a lot of chunks of yards. The Giants defense, that is, on the ground, they give up a lot of scores. My Breece Hall anytime touchdown did cash last week. It is the one lonely winner in this 3-week stretch, Josh. But overall, I just think the Raiders pull this out at home against the Giants, and they will cover that 1.5 points.
I know everything I said earlier about like, okay, if it's too obvious, don't bet it. I can't ride with you on this one, Luca. And I know the Giants lost a game last week that I actually congratulated our Giants friend Costa 30 seconds before the game was over. I was like, Giants, go Giants. And then they blew it. And I don't see it. I feel like the Raiders, maybe it's even coming down from ownership at this point. Like, we need a top pick. We need a real quarterback. We need to stop playing these games with the Derek Carrs and the Jimmy Garoppolos. We're going to ride this out with Aiden O'Connell. We're going to give you minimum resources to get this done. We're embracing the tank, and we're going to try to get our hands on one of these top quarterbacks in the draft. We're tired of being outclassed by Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes in our own division. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting, which I would applaud the Raiders absolutely for having that mindset. You're never going to consistently beat a Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert team when you bring a BB gun to the fight. So I'm with them if that's the plan. But in general, I think the Giants are a very frustrated team. Andrew Thomas is a huge get back for them. I think this has a chance to be the best Giants performance of the season. But, former Giant Antonio Pierce maybe is motivated to beat his old team. You just never know. But we have Miami Dolphins against the Chiefs. We have the Chiefs minus 1.5 over the Dolphins. We have the Philadelphia Eagles -3 at home against the Dallas Cowboys. And we have the Las Vegas Raiders with Aiden O'Connell -1.5 against the New York Giants. And that is this week's edition of Luca's Locks. All right, Luca, we are going to get out of here. We have talked all about Bills Bengals. Now all we can do is wait and see how it all goes down. But whether it's win, whether it's lose, whether it's tie, please do not be a tie. Luca and I will be right back here Monday morning on Bills Chat Podcast, anywhere your podcasts can be found, breaking it all down. Luca, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Just try to enjoy the 1 and 4 p.m. slates for what they are, people.
Oh.
They're not pretty. It's not a pretty main card at any stretch of the imagination. We get a beautiful breakfast game. We get a beautiful Sunday night game. We do get one good 4:00 game, being the Eagles and Cowboys. Enjoy football while it's here. We are in week 9. It is the pseudo halfway point. I understand it's not great, but just enjoy it while we have it, because next thing you know, Josh, football will be over. We'll be in the dog days of March and everything will suck.
It will. Hopefully we'll be reminiscing about a Bills Super Bowl parade that we attended together, but time will tell. For now, we get to look forward to this big Bills-Bengals matchups. He is Luca. I am Josh. We will see you next week on Bills Chat Live.